Hello guys, how are you? Cryptex here. Thank you so much for being here tonight. This is gonna be a very special live. We're gonna have Steve from True Crime Web. I'm very happy to have Steve here tonight. Please feel free in the chat to ask relevant questions to Steve. Let's take advantage of his presence tonight, guys, and thanks for being here. Before putting Steve here live with me, I'm just gonna say hello to you guys. Marion Tate, hello, how are you? Thanks for being here. Rescue all the dogs, well, VIP viewer, thank you so much for being here. Aquarian One, looking forward to tonight's show with Cryptex and Mr. Steve. Yeah, this is awesome having Steve here. Marion Tate, hello, how are you? Thanks for being here. Junior Johnson, hello from Michigan. Thank you guys. So no more protocol, and let's put Steve here right now. How are you, Steve? How
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, sir.
Thank you so much for being here. Mad respect for you, sir. It's my pleasure to have you here. I enjoy so much your show. You are a great asset in this community. I don't want to be cheesy, but I'm gonna be cheesy because I really like your show, man. And not only your experience as a previous or former law enforcement officer, or I don't know how to call it, but you are a very charismatic person, and that's why I enjoy also your channel, because you're always smiling, making jokes, funny, at the same time remaining professional, and that's awesome. So I really love your channel, and thank you again for being here. I know you were busy this week, you were traveling, you must be tired, and you're busy, of course, and you accepted the invitation. So thank you again, Steve.
Oh, I'm honored to be here, and it's worth it. I mean, of course, I travel a lot, and there's a lot of people that's in chat tonight. Marion Tate, who introduced me to Barbara Hall, who is in chat, and is the mother of Timmy Dees. And as people watch this tonight, absolutely look up the Timmy Dees case. It's one of the cases that in the Midwest we've been working for a while. That we've have some discoveries within that case that were taken to the prosecutor. I've already spoken to him about it, but we're having another meeting. And through it's amazing how viewers come to our channel. And originally, I came to start a channel just to become an ambassador for law enforcement. And Marion Tate, who is Barbara Hall's sister, said, "Can you look at this case of Timmy Dees?" And then, of course, I met Barbara. And from then, it went into the Durante case. There's a Doug Till case, that just three cases out of one. And it's amazing what YouTube offers web sleuths and these families as far as awareness and the opportunity to see justice for their loved ones.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're gonna go more in details about your foundation later. That's incredible. It's an awesome initiative, and I'm very happy you're doing that, Steve. So before starting here with this live, I know most of the people here know you well. I'm pretty sure they know your channel, but just in case, for my viewers, can you please introduce yourself a little bit, your background, your experience?
Sure. I'm a second generation law enforcement officer. My father came through the 60s, 70s, retired early 80s, and I went in law enforcement mid 80s and started off in the jail, worked the road, became an investigator, and eventually went all the way into getting my certification into crime scene investigations. So I was CSI before we realized that CSI was cool back in the days. I was going to initiate the uh, uh, the initial graduating class of CSIs for the state of Georgia. Back in the late 80s or early 90s is somewhere in that time period because it was like 2 years of training to get that CSI certification back then. They overtrained us. They didn't know. Now, this is a time of when DNA was not even really, it was only beginning to be recognized in the courts. So I've seen a lot of transitions of how crime scenes were processed pre-CSI and where it's at now and where it's heading is absolutely amazing. But that's through my law enforcement career. I had 20 good years at it. I've seen just about everything that you need to see. So there's not a lot that surprises me.
Yeah, this is gonna be like a basic question. Sorry for that, but what do you do as a CSI technician? Let's say, what's exactly the job? Reconstruction of the crime scene, taking pictures, recovering items. What do you do as a crime scene investigator?
Well, whereas typically whenever a call comes into a crime, say if it's a homicide or whatever, you have your initial responding officers. They'll secure the scene. They'll start calling in the investigators. Investigators may get there. And then CSI, we get there also. And it's a huge team effort of total chaos in the first hours. But our training, and we mesh everything up, get the gears going towards securing the scene and start processing it. What you see on TV as far as CSI is mostly true, but the timeline, it's not done in that hour. It's not done in sometimes the first year. But there's a processing of that crime scene in those first 72 hours that is absolutely critical, that everything that occurs in those first 3 days that can affect that case for years and the convictions for years.
That's the critical period of the event. Let's say the first 48 hours or the first 3 days. Let's say.
Oh yeah, I went some long days without sleep or very limited amount of sleep. But like I said, I came along during a period where a lot of times the people that is investigating crimes and processing crimes, their only qualifying factor is that they were there the longest. And they got that position of being either homicide or processing a scene just because they've been on the force 15, 20, 25 years. And a lot of things back in that time period, and when the government recognized that we need to do something to increase the solve rate of these crimes, and they started that program, which is amazing.
Yeah, for sure. What's the origin of the name of your channel, True Crime Web and the spider? I love that logo, the spider, and the name.
Yeah, my wife, she has dark humor like myself. She and I have a phobia of spiders. I hate can't hear them. And she, the only fear that I have, and mostly, and a lot of people in my community aggravate me about it, especially Al on the Prowl, and Junior Johnson about sending me spiders. But I have a web, and the fact, like I said, I wanted to create a web of professionals as far as even before I got into cold cases. I wanted to create and work with a web of YouTube creators to have an impact on these families. And then it just evolved into when the foundation was founded and the money and that was offered to create the foundation and create the opportunity to go out and work the cold cases. When that arose, then it absolutely, I created a web of professionals that work behind the scenes. There's a lot of people out there that do a lot of work on these cases that we work, because True Crime Web Foundation is the skunk works of the investigations. That stuff I don't create content on. People don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And my community on the True Crime Web YouTube side of it are absolutely amazing for the fact that they listen to me countless times saying, "Hey guys, I'm working on this. I wish I could create or share information on that." And so it's kind of hard for the YouTube part, but it's well worth it for the foundation part and what we do for trying to get these cases open and justice for these families.
Yeah, that's awesome, Steve. Really awesome. When did you start your channel? and why and
Uh,
how?
there was a Randy Gravett uh, I followed for quite a while when I found the YouTube channel, and he played a big role in the look at the Richard Allen Delphi case. And at that time, he was with Marv and Frank Master, and so through Randy, um, I started coming onto channels, and then I started my own channel, and that's how I got here. And like I said, that there from the law enforcement field, there's very few people. I mean, there's quite a few retired officers out there that have channels, but not so much for the CSI part. And so when I started my CSI and wanted to be an ambassador to look at the crime scenes and do some recreations and show and have so that people in the web sleuth world could have a better understanding of how law enforcement looks at cases. What the evidence tells us is far different than what people that have been educated by the CSI TV series has. It's just two different worlds and opinions. That just because you watch a lot of TV doesn't mean that you always analyze things correctly.
Yeah, for sure. What's going on with Randy? Is still making content or videos? Or?
Yes, Randy has changed his name. I can't remember what it is right now, but whenever I go by up there, I try to get and spend. He's an absolutely amazing human being. I enjoy his show and his content, and I'm glad to have met the man.
Yeah, it's awesome. During your experience as a crime scene technician, how do we call it? Crime scene technician?
Well, that's what originally was all our certificates back in the day. That's what it said. Now it's just CSI.
CSI.
I think even the maybe the training that I went through and what the CSI guys go through now is two different worlds. I think some of the certifications for some of the newer CSI things are like for you to get certified. I don't know what the level, but it doesn't include everything that we went through. We were that initial graduating test group, and so they overtrained us. They taught us stuff that we had no, that absolutely are not part of the curriculum now.
Yeah, and after obtaining your certification in crime scene, how many crime scenes you been?
Thousands.
Thousand.
Thousands.
Oh my God!
In my department, I worked everything. If it had any piece of evidence to be processed, doesn't matter if it was DNA, doesn't matter if it was fingerprints, or photographing scenes, and some of those, of course, if they're not all felonies, we may have some other types of investigations we would work, but a lot of burglaries, a lot of homicides, a lot of because when you go out there and you see these and you're doing death investigations, you're going to look at all the naturals and all the self-inflicted, and for the fact that they can be misclassified, and you have to be careful, and so you have to look at them and work them all as if they are of homicide.
Yeah, awesome. Let's talk a little bit about Delphi, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
I'm gonna start with this because I was thinking about you during the 3 pre-hearing days, let's say, we learned that we listened to this guy Cicero, who was like analyzing the crime scene, let's say, and he was talking about the F on the tree, the allegedly F, and he was giving his opinion about that, and he said, if I'm not mistaken, that it was the hand of Levis. And I remember that you made a video about that, and it was basically what you said in your video. It's like you were really ahead of the time. It was very similar to what you said and to what you did during your experiment.
Well, he's like I said, in his world. Currently, he's probably one of the top. He works at the Body Farm up there in Tennessee, and but all those basic things. It doesn't matter, um, with this when you work a crime scene. We understand what that blood is. We know what those transfers are. We know what that blood spatter is. We know what cast off is. And regardless, it doesn't change. You can have all the new technologies, and there's been some tremendous technologies that have come into the picture with over the years, even since my retirement out of it. And where we're going is amazing. But still, I can take the old school stuff that I learned and new technology, and that's where that's so special about this crime scene world is that even the new technologies can't change the physics of how that blood gets there. And
Yeah, for sure.
it may be a better understanding for the juries and the ease of the investigators to process it and bring it to the attention and to where the jury can understand that presentation. And whereas I have to build those 3D models out of wood and things, but now they have the technologies of this 3D imaging to create virtual worlds, and eventually that's what it's going to be. The jurors are going to throw on those headgear. They're going to be able to walk through that crime scene. They're going to be able to almost handle that each item that's within a crime scene at some time in the future. It's going to be what you see in the sci-fi world is coming, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the BG video and the pictures that were taken by the Libby's phone. Let's say there's a lot of discussions or controversy online in this community. Some people say that those the video and the pictures are altered, photoshopped, something like that. What's your idea? Maybe even some people that are not pro defense and respected creators, let's say, they formulate some hypothesis saying that maybe law enforcement was also hiding. Let's say if there's a gun that could be purposely hidden. What do you think about that?
Well, that's something else I did. Like you said, I was in agreement with the current expert that's been brought about the blood spatter in the hand, and just like I did with the Murdoch case on the shell and the directions of the fire and the sequence of the fire when I worked out on the Murdoch case for YouTube, and but with the bridge guy video, I believe that there was some manipulation by someone that was photoshopping for the fact of hiding the gun to take it out of that sequence. That while that was probably a series of the best video that they could get of BG, but there was something in that picture around his hands they didn't want seen. And I do think that there was some editing, and I think a gun was edited out. I may be absolutely wrong, and if so, I made a video that says I believe that, and I stand by it by what I saw and what I was able to recreate. Because when I went in there and did some of the air brushing and the photoshopping, my effects look just like the effects that are seen in that video, and found that extremely odd.
So that makes sense to you that that part of the video could have been altered by law enforcement to hide information that only the killer would know, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want the gun. I mean, they may have had such an image of that firearm that it would be making model, and you don't want you want the suspect to think that, oh, the video ended right here, and so that, oh, they don't even know I pulled a gun, for the fact that you don't want that offender to dispose of any evidence that can be incriminating, because law enforcement, they want that gun for the fact that they have a bullet at the crime scene. They have a gun that is seen at the abduction point. And if that gun at the abduction point matches a bullet at the crime scene, that's huge for juries.
Yeah, for sure. So This case is crazy. We have a lot of elements here that is all together is something crazy. We have the video and the audio of Bridge Guy, the perpetrator, that was taken by one of the victims. We are talking about signatures. We have two different sketches, catfishing scenario, Odinism, tentacles. This is a crazy case. You were talking, or you were saying before that you worked like in 1,000 cases or something like that. Do you remember any other case as crazy as this one, or is just because this case is that I don't know, mediatized, let's say?
Yes. Well, social media has created this storm, and we're going to see it. What's coming into the court systems now is going to be interactive YouTube channels with our courts, and we're going to see more chaos. And law enforcement is now, there's certain departments that are learning how to use the web sleuth as a tool, and we're going to be in an era of which I believe that we should absolutely allow anyone that wishes to view the courts or view law enforcement, that this oversight of that we see with this YouTube stuff is amazing, because it makes law enforcement have to step up to be at a higher standard. It makes our courts and our attorneys and our prosecutors to work at a higher level, and it will have an impact on those cases. But it also allows us to get word out to these communities of how they can assist us. And all these YouTube channels, absolutely, I have the utmost respect, that go in there with the purpose of bringing awareness to the case, so that we can get, like Doug Carter said, we need that one tip. Now, there's never been a case that I couldn't have solved with the right one tip. And so is that what brought closure to this case with Richard Allen?
Yeah, for sure. When we talk about signatures, do you think there are signatures? And if yes, what are those signatures on the crime scene, let's say?
The signatures at the crime scene?
Do you think there are signatures? Or...
Yes. Well, the sticks.
Yeah.
Which, when we look at signatures, what is it? Can it be? There's a lot of different things that can be at a crime scene, and only the offender knows the right interpretation. I couldn't say, although I look at those sticks now, as I always say, that when I got the images that were sent to me, I don't know what generation they were, don't know if they've been photoshopped. I know that there's certain things that I saw in the images that's never been spoken about, and some of by other creators of what they saw. So I don't know what generation I have, and so I have to be very careful with that. But the placement of those sticks, what they mean, I have no idea. But they have a meaning for the fact the offender took time to place those sticks after death. And so it had a meaning to him. What that meaning is and the purpose of that, I have no idea. But that's just my personal opinion.
So in your opinion, it was not randomly, the sticks were not randomly placed?
No, I can't see it, because there are certain intersections and similarities between the two. And I couldn't pick up 3 or 4 sticks and throw them randomly and get that same pattern at 90 degrees. And as you said, you had a great observation that on each of the victims, there's one stick that goes across that throat area. And I couldn't randomly just throw one up there to have that 90-degree across the throat. And I know that in the psychological world, there's a lot to be said about anything that has to do with the throat and the silencing of a witness or a victim.
Yeah, for sure. And do you think that because some people think or formulate the hypothesis that the sticks were placed to conceal the victims, to cover the victims, do you think that's viable, let's say?
Well,
likely?
Well, once again, I created a video of how quick it is to cover a victim with sticks, and just breaking up the outline. Could that have been, and he was interrupted by saying the neighbor coming home, absolutely. That, oh, he's coming up the road, I've got to get out of here. Was he going to take it and do more or with leaves? I just don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that if they were placed there and they are put there for his mental picture or actual photography, that he placed them there, that then he wouldn't have covered them up with leaves, because that was part of what he wanted to be seen by law enforcement. So if there is a message within those sticks, not only to the offender, he wouldn't hide them. He would just left them at that, whatever it meant to him.
Yeah, for sure. Do we know if the sticks were cut with some tool or not?
Well, there's one of them that through the image, it appears to be cut, but and even but through that 136 page mini novel written by the defense, they mentioned that one of those sticks had been sawed with some type of high-speed saw or rotary tool, and so I don't know.
Yeah, understand. Let's talk about the sketches, the two sketches. Does it make sense to you? That's crazy. That's one of the things that, what the fuck? Do you have any idea about that? Why did, I don't know. That's crazy. To me, there are two different people. There's not two. I cannot make sense of that. So
yeah, the sketches. Yeah. That's always given me a headache. Absolutely has with the sketches. What does it mean, and how will they explain that in court? And I think it will cause certain issues. But now Anna here has a good comment about, but some people make elaborate patterns with sticks. That was just up on screen, and that's correct. But they make an elaborate pattern to serve a purpose for them in the building of that fire. And so, yeah, you can have that people, they do certain things when they commit certain acts. They place sticks in a certain order. I'm one of those people. Every fire I build, I have a certain order of how I create the base, the foundation of preparing that fire. And so, yes, even the patterns of starting a campfire for people that are, building those fires. Everybody has a technique, and it's the same. Is this some technique in some signature of a fire builder, but is this some signature of an offender to placing those sticks? So I have to agree. I just look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, right. Coming back to the sketches,
yes.
that opens the window to think about multiple actors.
Yes, yeah, those those sketches, like I said, from Doug Carter's, have always given me a headache. And that, the community, when they first saw those sketches and the turnaround that when that speech that was given, you never thought that we were going to change gears. And when that young guy sketch came up, that to me at that point, look, that still looks nothing like Richard Allen. Whereas the first one can look a little bit like Richard Allen, but not the second one.
To me, yeah, I don't know. I don't see Richard Allen in one or the other one. Maybe Richard Allen is guilty and is the perpetrator, but the sketches don't look like him, in my opinion. But anyway, that's a matter of perception,
Yes, I'm with you. I can, and that was early on in the case. We looked at those other persons of interest that law enforcement was looking at. That was one of the most, that first sketch. Those other offenders, even the one out in Colorado and some of the other ones, they look so much like that guy. Yeah. And I thought, how in the world can so many people look like this one sketch and be scattered across the country that had access to that community?
Yeah, that Eldridge guy, the suspect Eldridge, he was exactly like the old Bridge guy sketch. It was the same. Even Daniel Nations was very similar to that sketch. Um, when we talk about the creek, there's also a lot of controversy and discussions. Do you think that the perpetrator and the girls they crossed the creek or not? What's your take about that?
If the information and the images that I saw are correct, then there are indicators they crossed the creek.
Indicators?
Yes, but law enforcement, they spent a lot of time in that creek, or at least the search team that was out there walking elbow to elbow, interlinked as they were doing searches. What were they looking for? Was it due to that some clothing articles had been found there and they were looking, or was that search due to that we have footprints coming into the creek, into the water, into the muddy banks, and do we have where they went up the opposite embankment after crossing the creek? I mean, there's so much information that we are absolutely unsure of at this point, and that's how come I want that trial, so we'll have a better understanding of why they spent that time in that creek. What were they searching for? Did they see some footprints? How many footprints do we see? And if we say that law enforcement is looking for a single offender, and can the creek be the basis of the lone wolf for the fact that we have shoe prints either at the start of crossing the creek or after creek, and before we go up that bank, we have where each of the victims were identified, their shoe prints, and we have one set of unidentified single offender footprints, or do we have others? And but they said that he acted as a lone wolf, so that would, if there are footprints, it would be indicative that law enforcement has a single set of tracks of a pursuer.
Right. The other time I was here with Skip Jansen, a controversial person in this community, but I really like his theory. I like to present different angles of the case, and I think you were watching the live, and you commented at this point when he was talking about the path. There's a path going from the bridge to the crime scene, and there were like blue flags installed by law enforcement. I think it takes like 10 minutes to go from the bridge, from this side of the bridge to the crime scene. And his theory is that maybe the perpetrator and the girls, they took this way instead of crossing the creek. So what do you think about that? Do you think it's possible or crazy?
Well, the audio will explain that, and for the fact that we have him saying down the hill. If that down the hill is on the short part of where he's approaching the girls, and it's within just a few seconds of going down the hill, and if we look at what the witness of I think it was some of the family members, extended family, that crossed the bridge, and they saw some skid marks of where it looks like someone slid down the embankment. That doesn't mean it was the girls. It could have been anyone that went down the embankment anytime within a certain amount of time. But if that video, and he's coming across, and let's just speculate that the video starts with where we see BG approaching them, and then 10 seconds later we have, say, one of the victims say he has a gun, and then 10 seconds later we have down the hill. Then of course we can say that they didn't cross back over the bridge. But if that video is running and we hear them walking across the bridge, we hear them walking through the woods, and then we hear down the hill, we can go with the blue flag system here. It depends on what the timing and the information that's in that audio of that video, because we have down the hill. If it's within seconds, it's on the roadside all the way across the bridge where first contact was made that we know of. And if there's minutes of just random walking across the bridge, then of course we can go with that theory.
Interesting point. Thank you. Nana, she's asking, can one suspect leave 3 signatures?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of things that, um, like I said, some of these offenders, they have things that they do throughout the crime. And it may be a manner of operation, modus operandi of how they do this thing, and versus, and that can be a part of the signature that they do certain things throughout the crime, and it can be looked at as a signature of how they operate.
Yeah, for sure. When we talk about the clients, do you think that this is a closed topic, or there's something going on there? To me, it's really weird. I know that this detective Vito said that they were not involved, and he said that during the process, the 3 pre-hearing days under oath. But to me, I don't know. Maybe I'm so stubborn, and maybe I'm so, I don't know. I have some kind of ego, because I always said that the clients were involved. To me, it doesn't make sense that they are not. But I don't know. What's your feeling about that? To me, it's really weird.
Well, if all the truth in that interview, if that is truth, that some of the questions and some of the answers by the client, absolutely, the girls, or at least one of the girls, was catfished by the clients. And if he made a statement, I was supposed to meet him that day, and he and they did those searches at that gas station that day, and he was in the area. And then he looks up, how long does it take? How long does DNA last on a body? What, I don't know if you could have kept me from going out and getting, or at least asking a judge, I'm going to arrest him for homicide. And if you were just looking to put blame on someone and create and get someone convicted, this would have been the perfect person to go after. No ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, he would have been an easy sell. But what made law enforcement not do that? What evidence did they have that was leading them that it's not necessarily him? And that will play a huge role of truly understanding why it is Richard Allen. But we won't know that until trial.
Yeah, and the timing is very weird as well. After the interrogation of Keegan Klein at the Grissom Air Force Base, they went right away to the search of the Wabash River, and law enforcement said the search was actually a consequence of the interrogation with Keegan Klein. And when the search finished, they arrested Richard Allen. The timing is crazy. So that's why I don't know. I cannot imagine how the clients are not connected here. But maybe I'm just
I don't know. I don't know if it was some weird coincidence that while the searches were going on, someone either turned a phone on at Richard Allen's home, one of those phones that had always been within suspicious of nature of being turned on and had disappeared off the network, and it just happened at that time. And then law enforcement went there. Was it some reflex upon the offender that so much attention was being brought back to the case through that Klein search of the river that he was reliving some part of? I mean, there's so many possibilities, and we don't know. Only the offender knows what led to his discovery.
Yeah. I don't know the technicalities of the legal process, but is it possible that there was some kind of negotiation with the clients, like something like, give me the information and you're going to have some kind of immunity? So
Sure.
that's possible or not?
Absolutely. I mean, and that may be. I mean, who knows? I mean, if the girls were catfished by one, they could have been catfished by another.
Right.
And the Kleins could be played a role in that. We just don't know. Law enforcement does.
Okay, so that's possible. That's not
Sure,
illegal,
absolutely.
let's say.
Absolutely. You know, because these people that catfish the girls, you know, they, and, you know, even Klein says that, you know, he created that, you know, some of that boxes and stuff for the people to gain access, and he made money off that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that angle of the case is crazy. The clients. And what about Logan, Ron Logan? Do you think there's a possibility there to be involved in some way? The girls were found in his property. He lied about his alibi at the time. What do you think about that?
I was surprised that the defense didn't use the Ron Logan, because you have the FBI, which a lot of people trust. If the FBI says he's the offender and he's the alternate suspect, I was shocked when they came up with this other theory of these other offenders that have alibis. We have a guy that was looking for an alibi, and which it still bothers me. I know a lot of people explain it away due to his driving history. I don't know. But another thing is, why would you ask for an alibi during a certain time that a crime is going on? It just drives you crazy.
Tentacles, huh? That's crazy. When we go, well, let's go to the Odinism angle. What do you think about Brad Holder, Elvis Fields, of all of this story made by the defense? There's some validity there, or just
if there's
a way to
evidence,
escape?
if we have evidence that the crime occurred at a certain time, and we have evidence that those people are absolutely, they have alibis, then you can't be in two places at one time. And so, is it that simple? Don't know. And so, and that's the only thing I can see. Now is one of the persons of interest in that little group mentioned something about sticks and things, and which I found extremely odd, you know. And you know, there's so many things out there that are odd, and hopefully we'll have a better understanding. Like I said, there's I've been on cases, and you know, cold cases looking at, and have 5 different suspects or persons of interest that we're looking at, and because the rumor mill within the community says these people did certain things and said certain things, and look at it, and it's just by coincidence until we find actually who is responsible for it. And typically, it's like I said, it's usually the simplest explanation is the correct one.
Yeah, for sure. And Elvis Fields, do you think that they were really fully investigated by law enforcement? Because when we heard the statement of the detective Murphy, he said that he felt like Elvis Fields was full of shit. But to me, that's like a feeling. We cannot go with feelings. Was he really fully investigated after saying that he spat on the girls? That what would you say if my DNA is found in the girl's body, something like that?
Yes, absolutely. And it is something that they will have to, if they didn't fully investigate, they're going to have a hard time on the stand.
Yeah, but the defense is not even allowed to talk about that. So
I understand, but that's currently. That doesn't mean in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, things can change up to the last moments.
Okay, because of some appealing or something like that.
Yes.
Okay. When we talk about DNA, what do you know about DNA? Do we have DNA, or don't we have any DNA, or do we have useless DNA?
I would be shocked if DNA is there. They may not have discovered it yet, but I'll always tell you that if there's no way, you know, that you go into an environment, Lacard's exchange principle is the basis of CSI. Everything from your environment when you go somewhere, you exchange. You bring something and you take something away. And
Mhm.
so, while DNA is not easily seen, I worked a homicide, and I've told this story in my community many times of an airbag, a passenger side airbag that deployed, and I knew our suspect's DNA was on that airbag because it broke his gun. And you don't break the gun without having contact with the hand and the face. I mean, our victim tried to escape through uh, manifesting this accident and deployed the airbags. Almost worked. Broke the gun, but there was still one bullet, and which he lost his life at. And it took me 4 or 5 times of resubmitting that airbag to different sections of it to be analyzed before we came back with a DNA profile that wasn't from the blood of the victim or the driver. And it was through skin cells and transfers of where you get that those um, burns, that when that airbag comes out at that tremendous speed, it absolutely just um, road rashes you onto the airbag, and it creates that skin transfer and the oils. And we got a profile out there, but it took me 4 or 5 times. And do I think that there's DNA at the scene? Yes. Does law enforcement have it yet? No, but I think at some point they may discover it. It could be on the sticks from handling. It could be on clothing, whereas he um, um, uh, uh, touched, or it could be on the victims in certain areas if he drug, and they just haven't found that mixture yet.
Okay. And in your opinion, let's say let's think about two scenarios: one actor or multiple actors. In which case is gonna be more easy, let's say, to find DNA. When you have multiple actors, there are more chances to leave traces of DNA, or is the opposite? If you have multiple actors, the cleaning they're gonna be able to clean the scene. What would be your take on that?
Well, it's the more actors you have, the more likely there's going to be that they're not always, not all of them are going to be operating on the highest level or by chance of just one single offender. The more people there, the more likely you're going to have other DNA profiles through their actions, or you'll have evidence of their presence, shoe prints, um, you know, or even uh, different um, types of injuries on the victims. Because usually, if you have multiple offenders, not always are those offenders um, uh, using the same type of weapons, or you can have a lot of different type of injuries that would be um, credited to different offenders.
Right. Good point. And let's talk about the bullet. Uh, People like in the dark side of the moon, they say the bullet thing is like junk science. People in the light side of the moon, they say no, there's some validity there. What do you think about that?
Well, the court says that there is validity within it, and if it gets allowed, it's due to the expertise of the expert that's presenting it. And you'll also have, whereas the defense will bring in their expert, and you always run the risk that with these juries that they'll look at each expert, and they may not rule it as junk science, but they'll see it that we have two experts with two different conclusions, so they just cross each other out.
Right. Um, what about the Brits guy voice? Do we have any longer sample of Richard Allen's voice to compare? I just saw one short video when he was talking, but I don't know if there's another sample to be able to have some kind of comparison, let's say.
Oh, I don't know, and that out of my pay grade as far as I'm sure that there's people out there in that field of study and the experts in voice analysis and identification, that whatever technologies are out there, they've run it. I can't imagine that hasn't been done and completed. And is that some of the expert testimony that be coming in? Very possible.
Right. It is another question. I already asked you this question in one of your lives, but I'm gonna repeat it here because it's really interesting. Uh, what's your hypothesis or your thinking about the fact that the Libby's phone was found under Abby's under a shoe? What do you think about that? That was kind of weird.
It was. Is it something that at the point that that phone was placed there, which victim did it? How was it hid? Was it done by the victim or was it done by the offender? And if it was done by the offender, there's a reason. If it's done by the victims, there's a reason. And we just don't know of why, for the fact that I have no doubt that if the offender knew what was the contents of that phone, and if it's in there, that video, there's no chance that he would have left it.
Right. Some people say that the perpetrator, he was maybe trying to hide the phone to silence the sound of the phone and not to be caught or something like that. But then he forgot about it. I don't know.
Is that possible? I mean, just like when he was placing the sticks, and was he interrupted? Because I can tell you, standing there, and I stood within just a few feet of where the victims were lying, and the neighbor came home. And now when I was there on that particular, and I've been there similar time, same time of year, similar foliage as far as leaves going and things, and also been there where it was as green as could be, and on in the middle of summer, dense foliage. And I've stood there, and that homeowner that was next door neighbor came home, and he stopped and looked right at us. It's only a few hundred feet, and there's a perfect window through even heavy foliage that it's no foliage. I mean, from where he parked, he's looking directly down at the locations where the victims were found. Clear shot. And that was in heavy foliage. And so was the offender interrupted and just forgot in the heat of the moment that phone was there. And, you know, the bullet was there and he had to leave. You know, was he fearful that he had been seen and the homeowner's going to drive home and make a phone call?
Yeah. If I'm the killer, I know that maybe he was overwhelmed at that point, but my reflex is going to be to throw the phone into the creek. That's like the easiest way to destroy or to hide the phone, and he didn't do that. So
you don't want to leave an operating phone for victims that are possibly alive, for the fact that they're going to lead to the discovery of you. They're going to call 911 if they have the capabilities. If he had that, what control did he have over them? That if he had control of that phone, what control did he have over them, and had was there any way that he had already at that point of when that placement? And are there certain signs and indicators that of how those bodies were positioned? Were the shoes there? Were they moved and placed on top of it? There's going to be, like I said, there's so much about the crime scene that can tell you about the sequence of events. And that's one thing we have to look at also about the crime scene is, did Richard Allen ever mention about certain things that happened in a certain order, certain placement, that has led to a huge piece of the puzzle that law enforcement didn't realize, but when they went back and saw it in the pictures, they said, oh, that's something that we didn't know, but he knows. I mean, there's so much stuff out there we don't know that and even in his writings and of what Richard Allen done, he has put and painted himself into a corner that I don't know if he'll ever be able to climb out of.
Very interesting point. And what about Libby being naked and Abby being redressed with Libby's clothes?
Yes, there's a purpose for that. And what is it? I have no idea. Now, I know I do have ideas. My training, as far as the profile of when you have nudity, what does it mean? You have that SA part of what it is. Not so much that the offender has to actually physically make contact with them, but just that visualization and what's going on in his mind and what fantasy is driving him to that. And just as much as with what type of injuries are inflicted and what indicators of rage or certain injuries, and what was the reaction and how was he reacting to their fear? Because there's some evil out there, guys. Absolutely, they feed off that fear. It has as much of causing satisfaction and arousal to them as completing an act to what we normally consider in our love life. And these people are absolutely animals and sick.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems that most of the rage went to Libby. Uh, that could give us some idea about the motivation of the crime, because Abby was treated like, if we can say that, better than Libby. Uh, what do you think?
Well, and now some of that rage can be brought on. Did that victim harm him, hurt him? And because she was an athlete and just as big as what the offender was.
Yeah.
And, although it still doesn't mean it was anywhere fair or equal. And so some of that rage can be attributed to that, or as part of his fantasy, committing certain acts to one victim and making the other victim watch, or he's watching what he's done with one victim while he does something with the other victim. It's so many different angles, and these things can be so complex that, you can talk about so many things that we just don't know.
Yeah.
What drives this type, because we can't think like these people. These, people that destroy these innocent children and lives, we can't think like them. It's impossible.
Yeah. Let's make this hypothesis. I know that during the process we are going to have more evidence. I think so. Than have the evidence that is already out there, right? But let's say there's no more evidence. Everything we know is that the bullet, the confessions, the Richard Allen placing himself at the time of the murders. Do you think today that's enough to say that Richard Allen is guilty or not? I know that there's going to be more evidence, but let's say no, for the sake of the discussion.
Absolutely. I think that if we have the video of the abduction and they can sell that pitch to that this is Richard Allen, this is his voice, this is his firearm he's holding, this is the bullet from the crime scene. He places himself there at a critical time, puts himself on a location on that bridge. Absolutely, if I was sitting on a jury, yes. I think, yes, I could say that, yes, he's responsible for their deaths.
Got it. One weird thing also in this case was, I don't know if you remember this. This was the Sergeant Riley when he said on the news that one of the witnesses, he said that the bridge guy, he doesn't have blue eyes. Do you remember that? And now we know that Richard Allen, he had blue eyes, so there's a contradiction there. Any idea about that?
Well, no, and that's going to come out in court.
Yeah.
Don't think they won't hammer upon that. of why did you say that? How close was it? Now the prosecution going to come back and say, how close were you? How do you know? And if you're 20 or 50 feet away, I don't know if you can tell eye color. I really don't know. But how close were they, and what made you look at his eyes? And so that would be something that'd be brought up.
Yeah. Coming back to the clients, to Logan, to the audience, we know that today, you said that may change, but today the defense is not going to be able to talk about that during the process. That can change. But and I can understand that at some point, because law enforcement, the defense is not able to connect these guys to the crime scene, let's say. But one thing that I don't understand is the geofencing data. The defense is not allowed to talk about that. That's really crazy to me. Do you remember something like that in the past? Any other case where the geofencing data is not allowed to be brought?
We're going into a new direction now. There's been a lot of things brought up about geofencing and phone data, and the courts are looking at it in a strange way. But there was a time, and I even created content on that way back when, and I thought it was going to be a huge part of the case because we were looking at when the FBI did that in their affidavit that he was within proximity or he was in the area. And that drove me along those lines to go there and look at that, find my phone and using whatever technologies that we used that night when we did the testing ourselves, and found out that, yes, even my phone danced all over town. I would move 5 feet, and sometimes it said in 30 seconds, I moved 300 yards. I didn't. Or I was within 5 miles. And so when I saw that, I said, oh, that's probably what was happening, although, it may be incorrect. But in my mind, it was very odd that our findings when we did our test was very similar to what was mentioned by the family of the phones all over town, and they thought the girls were riding around and all this. Yes, the geofencing, we see it often used, but where will it be allowed and when will it be allowed? And I just don't know. That's for far brighter people than I.
Yeah. And talking about the phone and the geofencing data, what's your opinion about the sudden resurrection of the phone at 4:33 a.m.? The phone was like dead during hours, and at one point it came back to life. It's weird.
Yes, I don't know what could cause that. I have no idea. I'm sure there's people that, or there's certain things, because phones do a certain thing every phone I have, that if you're using it, if it reaches a certain power level, certain things occur. There's certain defaults that if you get that, it's going to immediately go into, and I'm bad about, I have 3 phones I carry with me all the time. And there's always one of them that is in that critical 20% range, and they immediately do. And is that something that occurred at that moment that it went and reset? I don't know, but I do know that the research that I've done and looked at it, that there are certain things that can happen at a certain charge level. And I don't know if that's what occurred or not. I have no idea, but I know my phones do that they come on and they go into a different mode at a certain level. And during that cycling, do they cycle? I don't know, but we will know because that has to be addressed if that occurred.
Yeah, I understand. And I was thinking about the mistakes that were made by law enforcement during the whole investigation, let's say. We can talk about the interviews that were lost, like 70 hours of interviews that there were videotaped and they were lost. The missed video of the Marathon gas station, some statements that were not accurate, like the bloody and muddy uh, guy, etc. Uh, I know that mistakes can happen, but there's a lot of mistakes, and that can create like sympathy for the murderer. I know that there's a lot of people that right now they are pro Allen, and we see all of these mistakes. We see that everything that the defense is asking for is not being allowed. So that can create some, I don't know, some sympathy for the devil, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've lost an hour-long interview. Losing 70 hours is ridiculous. How in the world do you lose 70 hours? I mean, uh, you're looking, you're looking at 3 days of not replacing whatever drive or checking the drive or, uh, you know, I came along from the age where we had cassettes and things that, of course, you instantly, um, after the interview, you hit playback and you knew if you had it or not. And did they misstep and do some silly stuff? Absolutely. Will they have to possibly at some point face that? And yes, there's no excuse for that. Now, I've lost case files, I've lost interviews, but not 70 hours of stuff. But it's
And those were critical hours. As you were saying at the beginning of this live, the first 48, the first 3 days is that's the critical period.
yes. And I mean, you're in law enforcement doesn't just go out and say, "Oh, I don't have much to do today. I'm just going to interview uh, these individuals and go out for lunch." They have a purpose. And when you're interviewing, you're doing it for a purpose and for documentation and verification of what your facts are. And it was things that were missteps. And it's created this not perfect storm, but this storm of opportunity for the pro Allen people to argue. And I can't blame them, absolutely. Load
Yeah,
up.
right. And that makes me think about the Stephen Avery case, the making a murderer. Like I feel that we are paving the field for an appeal, and my fear is that at some point, if there's a if Richard Allen appeals, which I think he's gonna do that, and if he got free because of those mistakes, that's what I fear about this. I don't know if that's a possible situation, but when I think about Stephen Avery, it's really similar to what we are experiencing right now. I don't know.
Yes, and that's a good example. We have to look at because everyone thought when Avery first went to jail for the first time when the court, that's our guy.
Exactly.
And then when they realized that they had made mistakes, they didn't man up and say, "Oh, bad." And then
Yeah.
we have what went on, and that is a crazy story of that. And so, can innocent people be convicted of crimes? Absolutely, and we have to be very careful of that.
Yeah, 100%. I don't want to have you here a lot. Still, we're gonna finish soon. I want to.
I'm with you. I don't care. I've been on marathons. What do you think's best? I'm here, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Okay, I don't want to be abusive.
You're
And
not going to abuse me.
one of the cases you are working on is Evansdale. Can you tell us something about your work on that case? Any development or something you can tell us about that?
Well, we had developments, of course, on a couple of the cases, Timmy D's case and Durante Martin's that's being taken care of. Evansdale, I've been working on for quite some time. And of course, uh, while we have developed leads in that and they've been turned over to law enforcement, we're still working the case. And of course, I can't share what angles and persons that we're talking to and the things that are occurring in that case. But you know, it's absolutely one of the most horrible crimes that you can ever envision. Of that, you have a predator out there that took the lives of two absolutely beautiful children, and still out there.
Yeah, that's horrible. And do you think that there's a possibility that Evansdale and Delphi are connected, or not at all?
Well, if you look at just the coincidences, you would say, yeah, that's a hard sell not to believe they weren't. But having been one of the few people that have been to both crime scenes and been to both areas, that law enforcement will look into it. And we have no proof of Richard Allen being in the Evansdale. People speculate that and say that, well, he was somewhere in the state at some point. Well, you have to have some knowledge of that area, because I can tell you, when I went to Delphi and found the Monon High Bridge, it was difficult. When I went to Evansdale and found Seven Bridges, it was 3 times harder to find that, and absolutely remote. So there are differences, and there has to be knowledge. Whoever is responsible for Evansdale knows Evansdale and knows Seven Bridges. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And spent time there.
Yeah.
It's not a one-off.
Do you think it's gonna be solved at one point, or it's gonna be hard to solve this case at this point?
It has been a while, and time is, it depends on what evidence they have, and how it was preserved. That bag, the little purse that was over the fence, how it was handled, the bikes, how they were preserved, how they were handled, what was found at the crime scene. We just don't know. And we don't know what can be processed with new technologies coming in. Do I think that is that possibility? Absolutely. I think that offender is from there, and we're doing our best.
Good. Did you watch the recent documentary Taken Together about Evansdale?
Not yet. No. The documentary was done pre-Steve.
Yeah.
And but I've talked to some of the people that had done some of the research. Because this documentary we've been looking at, and it was done a couple years ago, I think, when they finalized it, or a year and a half ago, But and I hear it was done absolutely a beautiful story and had great information within. But it's like I said, I haven't had the opportunity to watch it yet, and I don't know if I ever. I hope to, for the fact that Drew is such an impressive father. He has other children, but his fight for Elizabeth is like all these victims that you look at, that their parents, their mothers, their fathers, that they fight for the story to be told, and so that their loved ones are never forgotten. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I don't know if I can spoil you something about the documentary, because I wanted to talk with you about that, but I don't know if I'm gonna say it. Sorry. The final scene of that documentary is awesome. And now that you're talking about Drew, I don't know if you know this or not. He had some wires. He went to talk to one of the suspects, and he
Yeah.
recorded.
Yes.
It's like if you think about Anna Williams, let's say, going to talk to the clients or Richard Allen, whatever, and recording those guys. That was awesome.
Yes.
Something that the state of mind of this guy trying to solve this case is something, huh?
Oh, it is. Like I said, um, I've met with him. Some of my other team members have went there with me and spoken to him. Some of them you know, some you don't know, but not one of them has ever not been impressed with the courage and the determination that Drew has for finding justice and
Yeah,
his positive attitude and what he does behind the scenes for other families. Absolutely amazing.
yeah, this such a tragedy. Let's hope for some resolution soon. And thank you, Steve, for working on that case. And what about Flora? Flora and Delphi, do you think there's any connection?
Uh, no, I really don't.
No.
I mean, you're talking about a small community of certain things going on within there, but no, I don't
All
think
right.
there's any connection between the two. That's just my personal opinion.
Super. Any question I didn't ask you? Something you want to talk about, or about your foundation or something like that?
Oh no, just that I'm so fortunate of when I started my YouTube channel and was watching these other creators create content and information, and I came into the community and I was welcomed with open arms, and still I try my best to work with every YouTube channel out there that approaches me and try to um, uh, answer honestly anything they ask of me. And through that, starting out as becoming an ambassador for law enforcement, and then being um, having the opportunity of this person to have all this confidence into me, with me, and my career to um, take their money, create the foundation to have an impact, make their money do good. It's absolutely amazing. These people that donate uh, their hard-earned money and their wealth to have an impact on these families. And these families, I wish everyone could experience and see um, the um, the looks and the tears shared and shed when you meet with them and tell them that, yes, I will do everything I can to get justice for your loved one, but it's due to my community. It's due to my people that are behind the foundation. Absolutely amazing group of people out there, and I'm in awe of them. I'm in awe of you guys that create content and bring awareness in the stories of these families. Uh, I, I thank each and every one of you.
No, that's amazing. Amazing job again, Steve. Uh, Look, I think that's it. And thank you so much again for being here, for accepting the invitation. And that was awesome. I really enjoyed the conversation with you. Your input is very is great, man. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Well, I'm honored to be here. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, call upon me and I'll try to do anything and everything. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you to the viewers, and see you next time. Thank you so
All right.
much.
All right. Thank
Have
you.
a nice night, Steve and chat.
Okay. All right. Bye bye.
Ciao. Bye.